made me who I am today.
Talk to me nice, talk to me honestly. Look in my eyes, don't let it fall on me. Say you're a good guy, make me believe it. Don't wanna hear it, I wanna see it, see how.
My name is Louis Spears. I am an educator and community leader, and I will be the next mayor of Jersey City.
Hello, and we are back with a post show. Why are we back with the post show? Because we understood that there was simply not enough time to get to some questions, and we want to make sure that as we are exposing Louis, and he's given a platform to explain his policies, that we address everyone's concerns. So with that being said, there were quite a few people who had different questions regarding safety. And so we're going to give Louis the opportunity to address those. And so one of them, which has been like, of heavy topic lately, have been bike lanes. And so there are some pros and a lot of cons, but Louis, would you tell us your thoughts on bike lanes? How do you think that they're working for us? Are there changes that need to be made? What are your thoughts on those?
Bike lanes, initially when I heard about bike lanes, I was very annoyed, like many of my friends and colleagues, because when I thought of bike lanes, I thought of losing parking spots, right? Like legit. And we are already, we're already, there's already a shortage in parking. And so when I thought about, man, we're going to lose more parking spots, I became annoyed. But then I looked at some research, and the research suggested that vehicular homicide was going up. And I understood that because even some people in our community have lost children due to vehicular homicide. So, I understood the purpose of it. But then delving into it a little bit more, I learned that, the policy of the bike lanes weren't really thought out. The policies weren't really thought out. So for instance, there's no way to get from like the downtown area to, for instance, Ward B. So if I decided to get on a bike, go on a bike ride, I would have to stop it prematurely somewhere, right? The other thing is, location. Like a lot of our bike rides, our bike lanes are on major roads, right? It makes bike riders uncomfortable, right? It makes drivers uncomfortable. And so when you think about this, I don't think that anybody would have been as upset. Most people would have been as upset if it was really thought out, if we really took the opinions from folks in the community, right? So if we had used a couple of side blocks to create bike lanes, and created lanes that will go from, one part of the city to the other. A Sunday ride would have been delightful, right? You could look at the trees, you can look at, the buildings and things like that. Instead of being on main streets and not really being comfortable when you're riding. And so although I thought it's a good idea, I think that if we had taken the input in terms of, strategic planning from folks within each ward, folks in the community, I think we would have been able to do a better job at implementing such a policy.
Absolutely. I like that answer, right? Because also when you assess the needs of the community and you utilize their voices, they'll be able to tell you, like, we need a bike lane. We need bike lanes here. We don't need bike lanes here. We don't want bike lanes here.
Right.
So, thank you for that answer. Other viewers and supporters of yours, they wanted you to address gun violence. And so a lot of times when we think of large metropolitan cities, violence is very prevalent. and they think that curbing violence is solely on the backs of administration, the government. And so the question was, what are you going to do to curb gun violence? And I'm not necessarily sure if that should be the question we should be asking.
Hmm.
So I'm going to prompt you just a little bit and expand it just a little bit more for you to explain what your intentions are when it comes to gun violence in our community.
So honestly, I gun violence is always something that has been my Achilles heel. Not Achilles heel, but something that has kept me up at night, right? Literally and figuratively, because I it just doesn't make sense all the way, right? Someone has a gun and will take the life of someone else. It just doesn't sit well with me. But what doesn't sit well with me even more is when our leadership choose to ignore or be very passive about something that's so important to many of us, right? And so when I think about gun violence, I think about the immediate things that we can do and then the long term things that we can do, right? And so some of the immediate things that I think will be very important is a care approach, or like the mentoring, where we are out in the streets with youth. I recently we went to a community meeting in Wilkerson, and the elders in the community really had a difficult time living in the same community with the youth. And what happened was, in the meeting, the elders of the community, they were talking about them being homeowners, them having having to wake up the next day for work, how they were disturbed, how they were annoyed, how they were inconvenienced, and the younger folks and who were in the room basically said, I don't mean any disrespect, right? But we know nothing about property taxes, right? We know nothing about what you guys are experiencing as the elders of the community. That they were just trying to survive. That eight of their homies, that's what they said, eight of their homies were killed, right? And murdered in the streets of Jersey City. And so their main goal was just to, be safe and to keep each other, close by. And so when I think about that, we encourage the elders in the community to begin to foster relationships. And when we had our second meeting, they learned that many of our young men weren't even eating. Right, they didn't have families or family units, and the elders in the community realized that when they built solid relationships with the young men, talking to them a little bit more, feeding them, giving them odd jobs to do around the community, that they build and foster a sense of respect and of connectivity, right? Which build their connection with the young people and allow them to understand each other's perspective a lot more. And so that's one thing, the care and the approach perspective. And then as adults, strategizing schedules and be committed to diverting behavior. And I could give you countless of examples, but our interventionists and the community, they are they strategize in ways to keep them active, to divert behavior. So they might do a vision board, and they might also take them to the beach. So right, just to keep them focused on things that are beyond their current situation. And lastly, with the immediate, is to provide resources, right? Just being very clear about employment, recreational, and enrichment activities for the youth. And that's on the immediate side. But then the long-term side, creating trauma centers. We've seen examples of this in Newark. We've seen examples of this in Camden and in Plainfield, where there are trauma centers created to assist those young folks who have experienced a lot of trauma. There's also this thing called evening reporting centers, where youth can go, and it serves as a triage from 3 to 9. 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. for 13 to 19-year-olds, and particularly that age bracket, because we don't have a lot for them to do in our city currently. And then the last piece would be a restorative approach to bring them back into the fold. And these are all long-term ideas when it comes to gun violence. So I know when we're talking about gun violence, people are saying, well, the buyback programs and things like that. And will try that as well. But I'm talking about diversionary programs that will help them to build confidence, build awareness, feel responsible for their role in the community. Those are the things that I think will end gun violence. Sorry, that was a very long answer, but I wanted to make sure that you understood my comprehensive approach to this thing, because I don't think that there are easy answers, right, Ms. Brown? But I definitely know that they're doable and they have been done, and we have to get started somewhere.
Absolutely. And so when you look at cities, large cities like Newark and Camden, they have a blueprint already for what's been helping reduce gun violence, right? Because I don't think it's fair to say, like, under my administration, this is not going to happen at all. But these are the steps that you will take to ensure that, you've done everything within your power to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it would do us well as a community, right? Because when I think about, when one part of your body that gets cut, right, or the white blood cells rush to that area to really heal it, and as a community, because that's such a natural response, right? And as a community, it's so imperative that we understand our roles, and that when one part of our community is hurting, that is important for us to rush all of our efforts over there to ensure that they are healed.
Absolutely. And I've heard you say things like violence is like the symptom, right? Yeah. And so can you speak a little bit about that, violence being a symptom of something else?
Right. And so we spoke a little bit about this earlier today, where, violence or crime, we cannot solve crime by criminalizing people, right? That crime is a result of, poor education, folks not feeling like they belong, right? Employment opportunities, enrichment/recreation activities, or opportunities. And when those things are lacking in the community, that typically is a clear response, or a clear indicator, right? Thank you for that. A clear indicator that safety is going to be a problem.
Thank you. And so I would like to move into the final piece, which was community policing. So Dan Wiley, who worked a very long time in Jersey City government, he wanted to know. He wanted to know specifically, how is community policing going to look different under a Spears administration?
And so with this approach, it's going to be all hands on deck. That's why united, we are the answer, right? United, we will figure out this thing. And I would like to coin it as modern day policing, right? So I read a book by Ron Heifetz, Leadership on the Line, and he drew a distinction between technical and adaptive solutions. Technical is where you have all the answers, and adaptive solutions is where you have to go out of the ecosystem to really figure out how to really fix something, right? And oftentimes we solve adaptive issues with technical measures, right? So we solve adaptive issues with technical measures, and really we have to do the adaptive work. So at the very least, right, community policing, technical things like, body cameras, making sure that they're on, making sure that the audio is also on, right? License readers, things like that. Like the technical things are very important when it comes to community policing. But then the next tier of community policing is the clear mandate, right? That there is going to be a cultural shift, and that there's going to be a clear mandate done by my office, right? And so as a teacher, I hate it when folks will give their opinions about how to teach, right? Because I'm like, you've never taught before. But I also knew that in order for things to happen in teaching, I knew that the mandate had to come from the top. And so I'm being very clear about what it looks like on the ground, right? So spending quality time in the community, right? There's a model in Camden, as I mentioned before, where police officers will have to log 30 minutes, every 30 minutes about what they are doing, right? That's one option, right? The other thing is, and this is also a long-term idea, is that we create a track, even in high school, where our high schoolers are developed into police officers, right? Where they are on the track, where they are shadowing, right? Where they are understanding the nuances of community through the police officers' perspective. And therefore, when they become police officers, they will know, right? They will have the onus of the work, and just being clear about the track to get them from, one place, which is a civilian, to a police officer, and that we're being intentional about that track, right? Just making sure that as a community, right, that we get buy-in and ensure that systems are created, because ultimately, without the efforts of everyone, there's no way that community policing will be possible. And yeah, that's essentially, that will be the beginning of my platform for community policing.
Thank you. And so we know, right, that our officers are not trained here. They are trained elsewhere. And so how would you manage that, just in terms of what they're learning from another entity that's essentially not Jersey City, and then bringing in, that outside learning into the city? How are you going to be able to negotiate that?
As a teacher, Ms. Brown, when we first got on board, there were district-wide mandates, there were district-wide professional development opportunities. But then when you went to the particular schools, there were particular things that particular professional development sessions that were unique to the school. In this case, it would be no different, right? Something like one of my police officer friends suggested this, where a police officer may handle something, and then their immediate ranking officer will go back the next day to get feedback from the family, so that they could ensure that appropriate policing was happening, right? Or culturally responsive policing was happening, right? And so those are the things that I think are important when we're talking about policing and equipping them. I haven't met a police officer who did not want to do their job well. I haven't met a police officer who didn't want to implement safety, right? But at the same time, I want to make sure that they are equipped, like I said earlier, with all of the necessary resources, so that they can do it with fidelity and with the community in mind.
Thank you. And so I think, if we have any officers who are tuning in, or, viewing this, I hope that they feel comfortable enough and feel energized enough that, you're going to do the work in their best interest as well.
Absolutely. It's all of us. It's all of us in this ecosystem. And, we're all going to have to do the work, right? It's not like we're putting the onus on the police officers or only on the community. But what I'm saying is that the community and the police officers and all these stakeholders, myself included as an ex-mayor, we all will be responsible for ensuring that, these mandates are implemented with the best interest of everyone at the table.
Go ahead, future mayor, Mr.
Whoop,
Spears.
whoop, whoop, whoop. These are things that are really passionate to me, Ms. Brown, and it would mean the world to me if we get it right. Honestly,
Absolutely.
I want to make headlines like Newark. I want to make headlines like Camden and Plainfield, because I know that we have the manpower, we have the skill set. We just need to make sure that we have the vision.
And the follow through.
Exactly, that part.
So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that we have tackled all of the questions that you have regarding safety. Once again, make sure you follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Make sure you visit our campaign page at spearsforjerseycity.com and donate. And if you want to volunteer, please feel free to sign up your family, sign up your kids, sign up your colleagues.
We're going to be out
everyone,
there.
because we have an army already. But
That's
let
right.
us know if you want to, you want to be a foot soldier. We are more than happy to welcome everyone who wants to fight on this uphill battle we got in front of us here. So thank you so much for tuning in. Louis, do you have any other final closing thoughts?
No, thank you. I think I exhausted everything.
Okay.
I'm done for now.
Have a good night, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Jersey City made me who I am today.
Talk to me nice, talk to me honestly. Look in my eyes, don't let it fall on me. Say you're a good guy, make me believe it. Don't wanna hear it, I wanna see it. See how.
My name is Louis Spears. I am an educator and community leader, and I will be the next mayor of Jersey City.